I'm giving away some of the factors here. So some things might be interrupted. So let's just wait and see. Panama, the same. They've announced several steps, and by mid-October, they're going to be fully open. Panama is more locked down than Costa Rica was. It's ridiculous. All right, go on. Gold and silver.
Gold and silver. Jim, we've had so many supply chain disruptions from mine closures, refiner closures, mint closures, logistics problems. And then on top of that, since the last time we spoke, well, then you got something like that massive Sprott announcement that they're going to be purchasing all of this silver. That's one thing. Then you got this massive Warren Buffett announcement that Berkshire Hathaway is going in on gold, on a gold position via, the proxy of the gold miner. And you got like the Ohio, I think it's the firefighters, police, and teachers pension. I don't know exact term, but they're saying they're going to allocate 5% to gold. So there were already major problems in the gold and silver market this year as it was coming in through the spring. And now you've got the institutional money coming in big time, Jim. So I guess just what are you looking at in gold and silver right now? Give us a little bit of some of the things you're looking at and some of the things you see there, Jim.
Two big events happened. Buffett was one, and Sprott was the other. Sprott was first. He announced $1.5 billion purchase of silver, and Lord Hemke, as I like to call him, Craig Ferguson. I'm sorry, what am I saying? I think that's the Imperial College criminal guy. Turd Ferguson. Oh my gosh.
Turd Ferguson.
Turd Ferguson. Wow, how could I forget that? Craig Hemke, Turd Ferguson, not Craig Ferguson. Sorry about that. A little mental cramp.
I'm going to email him that as soon as we're off, Jim.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Craig Hemke said to me in a recent three-way interview that, yes, my assumption that the Sprott purchase of $1.5 billion in silver dollars worth would happen starting in July and going all the way to the end of the year. It's not a burst of a purchase. It's an announced steady stream. What it does is it puts a floor under the silver market. You'd expect Sprott to buy silver. That's not a surprise. That's not a shock. But the amount was $1.5 billion. Wow. And why not gold? To me, that was a confirmation that it's wise to overweight silver. From the start of the newsletter, I said 80% silver, 20% gold. In 2012 or so, 13, I asked The Voice, what do you recommend for your billionaire clients? He said, I recommend 90% silver, 10% gold. But there's a problem, because if you want to buy $200 million worth of silver, you've got to wait. It's harder to accumulate that for the purchase and the delivery. Okay, so Sprott, I got a frog in there. Sprott was not a surprise except for the volume. And it was, to me, a surprise that it was not an announcement for gold. I believe silver to be the big game. I believe silver is going to have a gigantic push for demand as a result of the new energy and new technology wave that's coming. Then you got Buffett. Buffett is a more complex story because I think he's a piece of scum. I know he's highly revered. I'd rather not talk about why I think he's a piece of scum. To begin with, he's a liar. I'll just say this. Remember back in 2000, I think it was 5, he announced, oh, I sold my silver too soon. No, he didn't. He got called away from a silver option call that he wrote against his 120 million ounces of silver that was taken over by Barclays and created the SLV corrupt exchange traded fund. He lied. He said he sold early to his shareholders so they wouldn't attack him. He wanted to avoid the entire theme that you can write call options and earn income of something like, depending on volatility for the month and the trend and the season, something like 5 to 12% per month income on your big position, with a risk that if it runs, you're called out. That's why they call it a call. He got called out and sold at, I think it was about 7.5. And at the time, it was 8.5 or pushing 9 for silver. It's a long time ago. And he said, I sold too early. You big fat liar. Anyway, now we've got that he's bought a big stake. I think it was over $1 billion worth of Barrick Gold. Now, if I were to say to somebody, someone were to say to me, I want to buy $1 billion worth of stock, I would say, well, that's a lot of stock. You don't have a lot of choices. You have a list of maybe 15 or 20 very large mining firms, but there's only one that I would rule out, and that'd be Barrick. And that's what Buffett bought. So I painted a corrupt picture of selecting that out. And that's what Buffett picked. Now, for those who don't know much about Barrick, they started the Evergreen contract in the 1990s. The Evergreen gold contract, you got to wonder why they call it evergreen. Well, an evergreen tree is always green, even in the winter. Those conifers and pine trees and spruce and balsa, whatever. But the Evergreen contract never required delivery of the sold gold contract. That's why they're called Evergreen. They're always on the books. Evergreen, they're always there. Okay, that's a corrupt, institutionalized contract created by the, how should I say, officers and consultants and Wall Street connections to Barrick Gold. It used to be called American Barrick back then, but now it's Barrick Gold. Well, let me just move along here. We had an event in 2005 where Barrick announced that they were going to sell a secondary stock issuance and cover their hedge book. Okay. And then 2 years later, they did it again, and they let it be known that they really didn't cover their hedge book. They only covered a third of it. So they lost some credibility, they lost some stature and integrity, and people started to question, well, is your secondary issuance going to be complete for covering your hedge book, or will that be a lie also? So it wasn't a very successful secondary issuance in around 2008. The first one was around 2005, the next one around 2008. We never really heard much more about their corrupt shenanigans after that. And I concluded their hedge book is so damn big they couldn't cover it. Full of evergreens and full of other naked shorts. Okay, I believe Buffett did not purchase Barrick stock on the open market. I believe it was a private offering. You could call it a secondary issuance, but secondary implies that it's available to others. I believe it was a private secondary issuance, private, for Buffett and his Berkshire Hathaway. I believe he covered a significant portion of the hedge book that was on the verge of massive explosion. And notice that the gold price went from, 1,600 to 1,800 and 1,900, creased 2,000, came back down. And after it came back down, you heard this leaked report out of the Bank for International Settlements, Basel. A particular officer let it be known, and why they did, I'll never know, let it be known that Basel is in favor of a gold price over 2,000. But they just thought it was moving too fast. So they sent out the all clear flag signal to do naked shorts and suppress the price again. So that's why big commercials, namely big banks, have more naked short sales. But Craig Hemke, Lord Hemke, tells me they've been reducing their position, their open interest. They've been reducing it because we've had a month where it's not gone anywhere. The price of gold has not done anything, and they're just selling and covering. I mean, they're natural sellers, like the dumbasses out there. But it's more than dumbasses who are selling, Paul. It's people. Let me give you an actual story. This is from a friend of mine. And he's a client, he's a friend, more a client than a friend. And he called me up one time, because we know each other. He's visited down here a couple times. And he said, Jim, I want to tell you something. I sold $500,000 worth of gold today and yesterday. And I said, 2 days, it was done? He said, oh yeah, it's a big market. And besides, I was selling into a rising market as it was creasing 2000. I figured that 2000 wouldn't hold. We'd come back down and, consolidate in the 1900s for a while. But I wanted to have some kitchen money. That's what he called it, kitchen money, $500,000. I said, okay, what were you planning to do with that, Mike? And he said, well, easy. We might see a bank problem. We might see a bank crisis where I can't get some money out of a bank, but I'm going to load up with cash. I said, well, don't tell anybody. He said, yeah, I know, my basement and the wall safe. And, I said, and the cookie jar, never leave out the cookie jar stacked with $100 bills. He said, oh, yeah, that too. But he said, you know the size of my account? I said, yeah, I know. It's large. It's multi-millions. And he said, it's all safe. And so I'm down half. And those are the kind of sellers that are not dumbasses. The actual sellers are people like you and me and our wealthy friends and clients. They just want to get a little off the top. They've been sitting around with 1,300, 1,400, 1,500 for years, watching the corruption, watching it in disgust. Now it's over 1,900. And they figure, well, if it creases 2,000, it's going to pull back and consolidate. Okay, fine. He sold some. I had another client I told the story to, and he said, oh, your friend's an idiot. I said, no, he's not. How do you know whether he's got 40 million? I said, oh, I didn't know that. I said, well, we don't know that for any of the sellers. So we've got Buffett, which is different from Sprott. Reinterpret Buffett. Forget the covering of the hedge book. Forget that for now. Just think that Buffett legitimized managed funds for investing in the gold sector. Whether it's an exchange traded fund or whether it's vaulted gold and silver or whether it's a mining company, usually large. I mean, if you're talking about a hedge fund or something managed big fund, they don't go for, oh, let's buy $50,000 worth of stock in these 80 different tiny mining companies. Now, they don't do things like that. They buy Newmont, they buy Agnico Eagle, they buy First Majestic, they buy Anglo American, they buy a lot of big boys because it can absorb, and don't leave out Franco-Nevada. That's on my list now. Because it can absorb the volume. It's got movement every day. Buffett really put a green light on the whole sector, Paul, whereas Sprott didn't put a green light on it. It put a locomotive behind it. And the locomotive with the green light, to me, it's a guarantee. We're going over 30. It's going to take a little while to slug through all the corruption. But Hugo Salinas Price, let it be known in an article, this relates directly to gold and silver. When was that? It was sometime around last summer of 19. June, July, right in there. He let it be known in an article and a very brief follow-up with me. I don't want to say what he said. It was private conversation. He didn't want to say a whole lot. He was protecting his own sources. But what he was saying in the article is that there are oodles and oodles, think of a couple dozen, of secondary central banks, like, say, Saudi Arabia, like, say, South Korea, like, say, Liechtenstein, like, say, Thailand. And they're using double books, false accounting books, and they're buying up gold bullion for their reserves, for their central bank reserves. And they're hiring financial firms to do it. And they're falsifying their books, and they're continuing, and it's been going on for a year. So when you see that the supply is way down for dealers, it's not by accident. When you hear stories like a refinery is shut down, I bring some doubt to the room. Maybe they shut down for public output, and they're doing private delivery to central banks. When you hear that the Latino camp, this is a new phrase, like bricks, like pigs, it's CAMP. C is not Costa Rica. It's Chile, Argentina, Mexico, and Peru. Would you believe they produce 60% of the global mining silver output? They had a lot of mine shutdowns. To which I say, are you sure they didn't continue their mining operation to supply Mexico? And Mexico was one of them that also announced some shutdowns. Are you sure they all really shut down? I think most of them did. I honestly think they mostly did. And I think for different pressure, the bribery to shut down their economy. And they thought, well, if you're going to shut down the economy, we're going to shut down these mines too. But that's really cutting off toes for the Latino foot because the income for the CAMP nations and their silver output is enormous. And it's a significant portion of their income. So I tend to think that they were heavily bribed, but they might have actually had some sicknesses for their workforce. I don't know. Look at silver alone. You've got a reduction in output. I believe that's probably true. For gold, I think those refineries, they kept going around the clock. I'm sorry. That's my suspicion for private central bank supply. The silver is now being demanded more and more for solar panels. The silver is being demanded more for the introduction of new energy systems. Maxwell, my new guy, my new excellent source, premier guy. I'm calling him just for a funny little name because it's easier to say. Rather than say Maxwell, the banker from Central Europe, I'm just going to say Maxwell from Luxembourg. It's all fictitious. But he's not fictitious. He's real. We talked recently. He said, Jim, you've got two big factors with silver. This is from a May conversation, confirmed again in early August. He said, you've got a lot of ramping up of missile deployment, like in Turkey, like in Greece, like in Iraq, like in Syria, like in Saudi, like in UAE, like in Yemen. Whoa! And they all require, those missiles all require a significant amount of silver. He said it's somewhere between 15 and 25 kilograms per missile. And when it's fired, it's never recovered. It's vaporized. I added the point that even the ineffective anti-missile systems that have a lot of sales, like the Patriot is 30 years old and ineffective, but it's still out there. And when it's fired, it hits the ground and it vaporizes. Doesn't matter whether it hits its target, it vaporizes. It consumes silver. He didn't know how much silver was in the Patriot missile. I'm thinking it's like half. That's half of what's in a Tomahawk. It's a bigger warhead, this Tomahawk cruise missile. The Patriot is smaller. It might be a third to a half. Anyway, so he said, JP Morgan got themselves in trouble. It's a mixture of two stories. JP Morgan had a significant silver lease. He said, I can confirm it. I know people who know people. And they're now caught in a squeeze. And you can, I didn't confirm this with him, but here's my opinion. We're going to talk about this later in my next conversation. It's my opinion that the squeeze for JP Morgan on the silver lease to the military complex took place somewhere around 15, 16, 17. So maybe even 18, maybe 19, but I doubt it because it didn't have much time in 18 and 19. That was like waving goodbye en route to 25. It was a quick move. So I think JP Morgan is underwater by at least $5, $7 on a gigantic silver lease. And the fact that it's kind of hovering around 25 day after day, 26, 24, 27, it's caught in a range, and it's a good range to consolidate. This is not bad news for silver holders. We moved from the 15 to 17 range to the 24 to 26 range. Rejoice! That's a 50% move. Or 45, I don't know, I don't care. It's a big move. Okay. JP Morgan's stuck. I think they're reducing their position on that silver lease and taking losses because they know it's coming. If they don't do it now at 24.5 or 25.5 or 25.0, they're going to get their nuts cut off at 30 to 35. There's more to JP Morgan, and Maxwell confirmed this. I said, is it true? Just yes or no, and fill in the details if you wish, that JP Morgan is acting as a silver stockpile agent to replenish for China. And he said, yep, it's not just US military for missiles, it's industrial supply for China. And there have been a lot of efforts to get them to cease and desist in working in that collaboration with China. And he said, I just can't tell you whether they've cut it off or not. And I said, well, you got this collaboration that might be part of the entire JP Morgan headquarter takeover in 2014 at a huge discount. And he said, yeah, I don't believe the discount. I said, oh yeah, I know. That's probably just a remaining cash amount on some contract. And he said, yeah, exactly. But they bought the JP Morgan headquarters. It was 2 buildings plus a big nuclear bomb-proof gold vault. Okay, so, and the Chinese conglomerate bought it. So I think we've got more integration of Wall Street with China than we're aware. That purchase of the JP Morgan headquarters complex, I think, was a marriage. And maybe not a solid marriage, but a marriage nonetheless. And it's going to have some implications in the gold and silver market. I think we're going to see gold move past 2,000 pretty soon. I think we're going to see silver move past 30 pretty soon. It looks like my September 11th call of 2050 for gold and 30.5 for silver is not going to work. But I said, if it doesn't work, just give it a couple more weeks, like the end of September. So let's see where we are by the end of September, Paul. I think that it's funny to call it this way, but Basel might put out the green light for silver and gold to move again. And for a very unusual reason. They might be waiting for the secondary central banks to let them know at Basel that they've accumulated a significant amount of gold, so that when gold goes to 2,500, some of their insolvency will go away. Because the 1990 Basel game plan. Now, what was the guy's name? He was a former Zijlstra. Jelly, a Dutch banker. He was the chairman of the Bank for International Settlement. His name is Jelle Zijlstra. Zijlstra. Zijlstra mapped out how this endgame for the dollar will be played. And I featured that over a year ago in the Hat-Trick Letter. But basically what it says is the central banks will be badly insolvent from rescuing the sovereign bonds which were not worthy, and they would become a bad bank. And with the loaded up balance sheet of basically toxic bonds, these central banks will need a way out. And the way out is to accumulate gold and get this, and let the gold price rise tenfold. This is in the Basel playbook for the end game of the dollar and the escape hatch for central banks that are loaded down like bad banks holding toxic paper. Now, when this got cited, gold was around 1,500. And that's why you often hear 15,000 as a target price from some insiders who speak with loose lips. We're going to 15,000, Paul. And we're not going to be able to find equilibrium until we do. I was speaking recently about, I can't go on, it's a whole new topic. Maxwell described why we're going to 15,000. He described why we're going to 400 or 700 for silver. There's some meetings going on. They're called a reset conference or something like that. Global Banking Reset Conference. They're weekly meetings and they're managed by the Euro Central Bank. And Maxwell has a friend who's attending it. And if you want more details, sign up for the Hat Trick letter and read the May report, Armchair Talk with Maxwell. And I'm very happy to say that during a good long conversation that we had recently, Maxwell agreed to become the new voice. I'm sorry to say the voice has not been very helpful in the last year or so. He's gone on to higher levels and he just, I get emails and I get my hair rubbed the wrong way like on a cat's back. I've got non-disclosure agreements. Sorry. Yeah. The Saudi Arabs will return to their native trade of goat herding. Goat herding. And I say, well, you know, I don't know about that. The Saudis are sitting on $1 trillion of mineral wealth. Gold, silver, rare earths, cobalt, platinum group. The Saudis have been mining their oil while not mining for 30 years their discovered minerals. So I'm not sure the Saudis are going to go back to goat herding. I think they're going to actually have a run at this, what's it called? The 2030 plan by Prince Salman. They might make a run at that, but they're going to have to introduce better honesty and contract law into their system because it's pretty pathetic. What I hear going on in UAE is not good. Hiring, big 5 accounting firms to falsify documents in order to seize Western bank accounts. That's not how you move toward 2030 and the next generation of economic development. That's UAE. And what they're doing in UAE, they're doing in Saudi. I don't care what anybody says. They're like Mutt and Jeff joined at the hip. Anyway, I'm thrilled that I've got a very friendly, very bright, very connected, and very vocal, cooperative fellow who can fill a little bit of a void that's happened in the last couple of years with me that's bothered me regarding the voice. The voice will always be near and dear to me. He was there at my beginning and he helped me a lot in the formative years of the Hat Trick letter. He fed me a lot of good information, a lot of good theories. He taught me how to think in certain ways. But and if he's not going to help me, he's not going to help me. All right. I get some things from it, just very sparse, and it's bothersome. But anyway, I'm going to be talking to Maxwell. I don't know, every month or two, and getting a big drop, and we've got something right now that is really juicy. And I don't have his permission to talk about it yet, but it's further shenanigans in the gold and silver futures market. A different type of ugly shenanigans. And I'll leave it at that because by the time I write and post the September Hat Trick letter, I will have been given yes or no permission to talk about it, or at least talk about it in a framework that he's comfortable with, because I need to protect his anonymity. And anonymity is a big word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just joking with you.
And it makes total sense because, like, in my simple mind, I'm just thinking, you know, everybody, and just from the very, 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 very bringing it down to the most basic level. Well, what do you always hear? Everybody says all the time, all of the debt's not going to be paid back. All of the debt's not going to be paid back. That's like everybody knows that the debt can never be paid, which goes total sense for that $15,000 gold, $700 silver, because then the debt gets paid off, doesn't it, there, Jim?
I don't know. I think the debt is going to take a force majeure for U.S.
Force majeure.
Treasury. And I think that we're going to get some force majeure for a lot of major bonds, corporate bonds. I think we're going to see a force majeure for mortgage bonds. And with the treasuries and big corporations and mortgages, it will be easy to then forgive mortgages and maybe have a more widespread debt jubilee. I think we're going to see a debt jubilee, Paul. And if they did not run up the U.S. government debt $5 trillion this year alone, there's more deficit than there is non-deficit in the budget. It's over 50% is what I'm trying to say. I think we're setting us up psychologically and intellectually that it makes logical sense. And student loans, I think, are going to be forgiven. What are you going to do? You go to the reset, and you're going to have like 5 million paupers who are going to be indentured servants the rest of their life. No, it's not going to work that way. What are you going to do? You're going to have 30 million, 40 million foreclosures and people homeless? I don't think it's not going to work that way. It's just not going to work that way. What are you going to have? I think right now we've got a directive from the White House. Trump has told the debt rating agencies, no debt downgrades. When I saw General Electric, GE, get downgraded to BBB a little over a year ago, I think it was a year and a half, like 15, 16 months ago, early 2019, I thought, they're all going to BBB. And then when I saw the trouble for many of them getting knocked down into junk, and notice that it stopped. March, April, we had a few knocked down to junk, like B minus, double B minus, or whatever it is. Then it stopped. Why did it stop? Did the trouble go away? I don't think so. Did it all get worse? Absolutely. What stopped? The downgrades stopped. I think it by order. We didn't want to cause confusion in the bond market and wreckage of the banking system. I think we're going to have a debt jubilee. I think credit card debt is going to go away. Mortgage debt going away. What I don't have a good answer for is rent. But, just look at the chain of command with rent. Okay, an apartment building, all the rent is forgiven, fine. What happens to the landlord? He's got a mortgage. Well, that gets forgiven, okay. And then trickle down and there's no rent. How long are we going to have no rent? How long are we going to have no mortgage? I mean, golly, this is going to get very complicated. My head spins. It really does.
Now, Jim, so just go ahead and close it off. I won't keep any more of your time. I know it's valuable and you've been so gracious today already, but what's the last thing you want to say here to close it out, Jim? Do you want to talk about the hat trick letter, or you want to talk about what you're looking at, if we can even make it through to the end of November here, or what do you want to sign us off with here, Jim?
I want to do a combination of future rollout and the hat trick letter.
Okay.
Promotion. Let me start by saying I'm positive. I believe Trump has got 1 foot in the bad pond and 1 foot in the good pond, and he's got some doubles and he's got some flipped agents as officials, and he's fooling some people in the evil deep state camp, the cabal. The cabal is the globalists. The cabal is the deep state. It's the fascist camp. It's, big pharma, news networks, American Medical Association, some portions of military complex, big banks. I think they're going to pull this off. The election, that is. If they had an honest election, I think Trump would win by somewhere between 40 and 60%. That's 40 and 60%. A legitimate poll I saw recently had him at 75 versus 11%. versus to Biden. 75 versus 11. There were more undecided than there were for the dementia. I called this former senator from the state of dementia, Biden, who I think is a clone. I just don't think that's the original Biden. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. The chaos is going to come with the mail-in ballots. And the Supreme Court, as I mentioned, has ruled that gerrymandering for redistricting of the Oregon representatives was not valid. So how on earth are presidential votes going to operate with mail-in ballots? They're going to try in the Democrat states to say, well, we got people who are afraid of the pandemic and they want to stay indoors and be safe and they don't want to mingle with all the crowds at the voting centers. So we have to accommodate all them. And it's going to get interesting. It might get chaotic. And there might be a tremendous number of mail-in ballots that get ruled out. Hulk Hogan was in the news. I don't know whether it was Social Network or just got quoted by an online journal, but Hulk Hogan, the former wrestler, says, I have a friend whose dog named Nugget got a mail-in ballot for the president vote. Okay, this is extraordinary, the level of corruption in the Democrat Party. I have a hard time calling it the Democrat Party because it's more like the American Marxist / globalist party. Some of its funding promotions are from Soros. That's not Democrat. That's very anti-democracy. So when the Democrats don't act like promoters of democracy, like challenging votes, shutting down economies because the other political party has the White House, that's not democratic. Democratic has an implication of fair-minded. He's our president, so we'll honor him and respect him and follow his orders and leadership. And we don't have that. So the Democrat Party is acting like a rogue political party that deserves banishment. And I wonder if that's what's on the other side of the reset. Maybe the creation of a new political party like Libertarian versus Republican. I don't know. I don't have the answers for all that. But I think we're going to have some ugly, drawn out challenges from many states. And you're going to have to watch the military because I believe they are now in charge of most of the voting centers. And I believe they have cleaned out the Diebold corrupt software. Let me give you a quick story. I've got a friend. His name is also Jim, and he comes from Philadelphia. And in the 2004 November election, where it was John Kerry versus Baby Bush for re-election, my friend Jim volunteered along with 5 other people to enter the voting center and inspect the levered machines. There weren't automated computer type software machines. Those are corrupt in a different way. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't vote that way. That's your summary. I didn't vote that way. Could you? Okay, that's the Diebold effect. But with Jim, it was, they looked at every machine and every single one had 500 votes for Bush at 7 in the morning before they opened. Okay, that's just blatant corruption.
Yeah.
I'm told that the NSA and the military are working overtime to make valid official voting centers, but we're going to have a real problem with the mail-in ballots. Okay. www.golden-jackass.com. That's the name of the news, the website, and it's the home of the Hat-Trick Letter, my newsletter. I now have, amazingly, 16 and a half years. When I started this, I had brown hair, a little more of it, and no wrinkles. Well, I still have no wrinkles, but I'm collecting Social Security now. So it's been a long haul. It's been a great ride. And I got to say, the only regret I have is the spring of 2017 going on and on about the details of ritual satanic killings of children, because my life has turned into a partial hell with staggering losses, removal of all savings, debts, lost pensions, and I'm struggling. I'm doing okay, but I'm struggling. I wouldn't mind a debt jubilee, but that wouldn't apply to a loan for my brother. That'll be taken care of at our inheritance, it seems. My dad is 107 months, no, 108 months of age. Unbelievable. Still alert, still lucid, as they say. Slower, but lucid. I invite people to go to the Hat Trick Letter website, Golden-Jackass, check out the public articles and interviews. And I got to say that, years ago, there were 3 times as many articles as there were interviews, and now there are 6 times as many interviews as there are articles. I'm getting invited all over the place, and I think I know why. It's because I got a lot of correct forecasts. In the last year, there was a group of 15 forecasts that pretty much hit simultaneously, like infinite QE, rejection of the dollar globally, bond failure, big jack up in the Treasury bond debt, U.S. government debt. and now this Skidmore fellow, the professor of finance from Michigan State, he's actually put out some information that he's discovered an additional 92 trillion missing. It comes from Treasury bond churning and duplicate serial number sales. In other words, 10 billion in Treasury bonds is to be refunded and sold again, but they really do 20. Italy did that a lot. They'd have 2 different bonds with the same serial number. Where does the extra money go? It goes to Wall Street, people. Wall Street. It goes to Wall Street. 90 extra trillion dollars went to Wall Street over the course of maybe 40, 50 years. They learn the trick, and then they turn it on, and then they ramp it up. And Building 7 at the World Trade Center was where a lot of records were kept by J.P. Morgan regarding bond fraud. That's why it had to be taken down. And that's how they stay safe. That's why there are no criminal charges against them, because there's no data. It's all gone. Okay, anyway, I got a lot of correct forecasts. And I used to list them month after month after month, but I stopped because I don't want the risk of being obnoxious. But there are 15 to 17 forecasts that I listed as in progress and rolling out. I started that in October last year, and I cited it for 4 or 5 consecutive months. These are extraordinary times. We've now moved from infinite QE forever to special funding of everything under the sun. They're putting the entire economy and financial system on life support, and where they're failing is with adequate funding for households. I just don't think the PPP, the what do you call it, personal payroll protection, I don't think it's adequate. It doesn't continue. It's not enough, and it doesn't continue. They're having no trouble with the Wall Street extraordinary multi-trillion-dollar support, but they're having a little bit of trouble on Main Street with the households and the businesses. The small businesses, they're giving them loans. Why aren't they grants? Why aren't they just give them a grant? Why are they loans? And with the mortgages, why are they delaying the payments? Because, when 3 months are up, it's all due again. So they're going to have, okay, it's a delay for foreclosure. It's not a delay on payments. They're not doing a good job with the private sector for the little guys. I got a friend in Los Angeles. He's got 3 clothing stores. He said, Jim, I'm pretty much bankrupt. The big stores, the big department stores, they're not shut down because they got bigger owners who are friends of the governor and, paying them bribes, whatever. And he said, I'm just dying a slow death. I don't think I'm going to make it. And it's really not certain, but they got to open up tomorrow, and even then I'm not sure I'm going to make it. So they're not doing a good job with small business. It seems like part of the motive here is to wreck some small business sector, and it's a big growth sector for the U.S. economy. Anyway, back to the hat trick letter. I'm very happy to report that in the last few months has been a surge of new orders, and I'm just very happy about that. It took a crisis. I didn't let a crisis go to waste, Paul, and it's not my doing. But people need to know what's going on, and I'm letting it be known, and I'm getting some very factual information. But I'm also doing something new in addition to the donate button, which has been there now for a full year. It's been there a little over a full year. It's actually been there for 14 months. Yeah, 14 months exactly now. And it's been a lifesaver. It kept me in business. It really did. I'm not exaggerating. It kept me in business. I don't think I would have the newsletter if it weren't for the donate button and the nearly 800 people, individuals who donated various amounts. I've got another button, and I started it in January and February. It's called the consult button. I did a consult 2 days ago. You know, it's intriguing. It's fun. I don't like to say fun. It's an enjoyable process to fulfill a consult session because my clients and followers are just so smart and swift. The one from 2 days ago was, here I got the notes, a fellow from the Pacific Northwest, self-made millionaire, retired. He said, Jim, you fascinate me with your logic and your line of reasoning and how you test your theories with the risk of putting something out there, and often you're finding that it's confirmed. I like your way of thinking. And we went on and on. I gave him extra time. I give everybody extra time. You know, I figure the first 10 minutes are getting to know you. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? What's your career? What do you like to follow? Things like that. But the consults are fun. I actually got into a little trouble 2 weeks ago, Paul. I had 6 consults. They stacked up when I finished up the August hat trick letter, and I don't take time unless it's a half-hour consult. You know, I'll do my work, and then I'll do a half-hour consult. But I let them stack up, and then all of a sudden I got a couple more, then a couple more, and I had 7. I had to fulfill. So I did 2 a day, and now I've got just 1 to fulfill. They're fun, they're interesting, and I learn from them. Not always. I've learned a few things, and I don't want to talk about some of the things I learned. Jim, you need to know this. I'm ex-military. I got some things to tell you. You'll find this quite intriguing. And I'm not sure whether you find it wise to talk about it in an interview. Well, you're right. That's kind of scummy. Yeah, let's leave that alone. One that I will talk about was a fellow who had a good friend, 20-year friend, and he worked for Secret Service. They're both from the Washington area, and his friend worked at the Secret Service, and he had a White House detail, and there are a good 10 people with the White House detail because they got to guard the entrance, and they got to guard dignitaries coming in and out. They got to guard, the president, the vice president. They guard what goes on in the White House. Anyway, this guy was a White House detail Secret Service officer for, I think he said for a couple of years. And one time he was asked, your detail is out in Bethesda. You need to guard this, whatever, like an ambassador, keep him company for the next 24 hours. Your ride's right there in the limousine. He gets in the limousine, and inside are 3 Obamas. I said, what did your friend say for the description of the 3? He said, they were identical. They were identical. They were probably clones. They were identical. And the only thing that was different, because it became a point of conversation. Hey, you guys, you're all Obama. Isn't that interesting? Are you all exactly the same? One had freckles here. The other had freckles there. And one of them had a scar on the back of his skull, which is the original.
And we're talking about Barack, not Michael.
We're talking about Barack Obama. There were 3 of Barack Obamas in the limousine. And I joked with my client. I said, one of them is to handle White House duties. One of them is to play golf. And one of them is a fundraiser. And he said, yeah, they rotate, Jim. And I said, how often is it that they actually bump into each other? And he said, oh, it's a major project keeping them separate. You can't have one showing up in, Fredericksburg, Virginia, and the other one's in Chicago. Wait a minute. The news is on. You can't do that. So it's very much managed. And one of the hardest things is just programming them on what the main Barack Obama just experienced. Last week you met so-and-so, and here's what was discussed. They use them for the danger zones. I could go on and on. The voice told me 3 years ago, there are 7, you need to get with the reality. Now I told him, I know there's clones. I know, I just need details. And he said, well, the American people need to get with reality. There are 7 cloning centers on the planet. They've been operating for 40 years. And I got lots of questions. Well, when a clone is ready for action, how many years of age does it have? Is it 3 years old and an adult new Biden? And that's why he seems so dumbass, because he's got an head full of nothing but air. All they teach Biden to do is how to grab women's boobies. Okay, Biden is a joke, and he's an example of a bad clone, and this might come out. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, got to go, and I invite people to sign up for a consult. You've got your own personal issues. You got your own pet projects and pet stories. You might want to learn about something that I can help with. And what I'm finding is over 90% of the areas of concern I'm able to cover. And that was a concern at the beginning. Oh my gosh, a little bit of worry, a little bit of, personal insecurity. What happens if there's a consult for an hour and you got 5 topics and I don't know much about 3 of them? What I'm finding is if it's an area that I've got lesser knowledge and experience, we talk about what I do know in the area, and then the person shares what he knows or she knows in the area, and we move to something else.
There you go, folks. Hit that donate button, hit that subscribe button, hit that consult button. And if you don't, I won't hold it against you, but you really need to be listening to Jim Willie either way, because you will find inside information and analysis that you will not find anywhere else. Golden-Jackass is the website. Jim, I'd like to thank you for returning again to Silver Doctors.
It's been a pleasure, Paul. It went a bit longer than we expected, but we hit on a lot of very interesting topics.
Indeed. We'll catch up with you in a couple more months here, Jim.
Okay. Bye now.